Okay, we are doing Peidal Halacha Zayin. Okay, this is the last halacha of the first half of the simon. Okay, or what we call the first half of the simon, and which is pre-shehesliya, fruit that became infested with bugs. Ve'en yaduim b'mechuber and b'tolosh. You don't know if the bugs came on when the fruit was attached to the ground or not attached to the ground, and that would be to say as if it would be when it was attached to the ground, it would be usher, and it would be not attached to the ground, then it would be mutter, or it would be potentially mutter. So you're masupik. There's a bug in there. You see the bug that's in there. You just don't know whether the bug came on when it was attached to the ground or not attached to the ground. So the din is it's usher, and the bug is you're not allowed to eat that fruit. I say it's the end of the first half because until this point of the simon is talking about when you have a bug, just is the bug mutter usher. That was the first part of the simon. The rest of the simon is going to be about not that I have a bug, but I suspect that there's a bug. I don't know that there's a bug, and what am I supposed to do if I'm not sure if there's a bug? Okay? This is the end of the halachas of things where I have a bug in front of my eyes. Okay, so in this halacha, it talked about one suffix, and the suffix in this halacha was you don't know if the bug came on b'tolosh or b'mechuber. That was this halacha. Halacha ches, which we're not seeing now, that's going to be next time. Halacha ches is about not that I don't know if it came on b'tolosh or b'mechuber, a different suffix, which is I don't know if there's a bug altogether. I pick up a head of lettuce, and I don't know is there a bug or not. Not that I see something, I just don't know if there's a bug or not. And the thing is, we're machmer on both of those shilos. Both of those shilos are machmer. Individually, okay, let me say it. We're machmer on those shilos individually, but not simultaneously. That is to say, if I pick up a vegetable and I see something on it that I don't know if that bug came on when it was betolish or b'mechuber, so the bug that I'm looking at, I don't know if that bug might be a mutter bug or an usher bug. That Aruch said you have to be machmer and say it came on b'mechuber, and it's awesome. The next halacha is going to say, if you have a vegetable that you don't know if there's a bug inside of it, I pick up this head of lettuce, I don't know if there's bugs inside of it, but a meat hamatzuri has bugs in it, there's a certain amount of bugs in this thing, then I have to be machmer and say that there is a bug in that vegetable, and I can't eat it as is. In other words, and you have to check it. That's what we're finding. You have to check it. What happens if I have both? Okay, if I have both things at the same time, I don't know if I have an insect on there, and even if I would have an insect in there, I wouldn't know if it was betolish or b'mechuber, then I could be makel. Okay, so when I said lettuce, I should have been more clear. The bugs that are in lettuce are bugs that come on when they're attached to the ground. Those bugs don't come on in tags. Tags, I mean, I guess some bugs come in tags, but the bugs that I'm looking for, real bugs, the typical bugs are bugs that come on betolish. The bugs that are there, if they're in there, they came on when the thing was attached to the ground. So in the lettuce, I have one suffix. Did the bugs come on? Are there bugs or are there no bugs? In the fruit that the Shulchan in our case, I have a different suffix. I don't know if it was betolish or b'mechuber. So each one of those are machmer. What happens if I have both of them? Then I'm makel, and that's meduik in the words of the Shulchan Aruch. In our case, it says pre-shehesliya, a pre that was infested, and you have one suffix. The next thing is kol mini perishah darken lahasliya. It's the kind of fruits that typically become infested, meaning, but I don't have something crawling across that I have the shiloh on that specific bug, but just a suffix. Are there bugs or are there not bugs? Okay, and the way we would explain it is, there's two ways to say it. I would have said it is that's if there's only one suffix, then it's a suffix deraisa. I mean, I have a bug in front of me. It might be from a bug that came on betolish or b'mechuber. That's a suffix deraisa. If it's a bug, then it's also deraisa. I have a vegetable that may have a bug crawling around it. I don't know if there's a bug in there. Suffix deraisa. If I have a vegetable that's only infested to me in hamatzuri, I have in front of me I have a chiv d'rabbanan to check it. I have a suffix on that d'rabbanan. Whether it came on betolish or b'mechuber. Within the suffix, I have a suffix that I can be makel, both the way the Taz says it. The Taz says something about raisins, which we talked about. The Taz says it calls it a svek. Okay, however you want to call that question, whatever you want to call it. But if I have both silos together, then I can be makel.
So should I be makel? Can I be makel also if? Not if it's a meat matzah, even if it's worth a meat matzah, even if it's like a 50-50 possibility that the bug I still have this svek.
What's my svek?
Something is a bucket, something not a bucket.
And something if it's betolish b'mechuber.
Yeah.
Potentially. So you can point to the Taz, even if it's common to be infested. Common meaning even more than roy. Maybe it's still svek. Okay, I don't know.
Well, if it's right, then maybe it's something like that. I don't know.
So that the depends on the rules of svek seker. Can I make a svek seker even if, let's say, 75% of the time it's there? Am I still able to make a svek seker?
I don't know, 50% I don't know.
Okay, so it's playing 50-50. So then according to Taz, the way he's saying, which is that it's svek seker, I could still say svek seker. So something like this, and so, okay, that's fine. You could say that. Okay, now there are those we will maybe see next time in Halacha Ches, a Ran who says that you should be machmir even if there's both svekers. But the Taz says, which is what we do, which is that if there's both svekers, then we're going to be making. Okay, we talked about this when we mentioned this. We talked about reasons. Okay, this that we say that you should be machmir if you don't know if it's b'tolish b'mechuber, is basically it's a gemara. Okay, it's almost a fair Gemara on Daf Ches that says that if you don't know if the bug came on b'tolish b'mechuber, you should be machmir. That our halacha zayin is basically straight out of the Gemara. Okay, the crazy place he says that if we were making this diyun on the fruit, we would give the fruit a cheskes kashrus. When the fruit was created, it didn't have any bugs on it. The question is, did something get onto it? So if the shiloh was a shiloh on the fruit, we would say is the bug came on later, meaning it came on b'tolush, meaning the bug is mutter. That's what we would say if we were using the chazaka of the fruit. We would say the fruit started with mutter. So the crazy place says the fruit is kosher. There's nothing kosher about the fruit. There's no chazaka on the fruit. The shiloh is on the bug. The bug doesn't have a chazaka to it. There's no chazaka. There's chazaka to the fruit. The shiloh is not. I'm allowed to eat the fruit. The question is, the fruit is harboring.
Remember I was talking to someone about quail eggs, so that's in line too.
The fruit is harboring bug, but it's harboring the bug. The bug, there's no chazaka on the bug. Okay, now he says this. Now there's a problem because we had a machlokes beforehand about whether a bug that's on a fruit that's attached to the ground has to crawl. Okay, so he's saying that the bug doesn't have a cheskes kashrus. The bug does have a cheskes kashrus because the bug, until it crawls the first time, according to the mechaber, until the bug crawls the first time, the bug is mutter. So when the bug was born, the bug was mutter. So you have a question: is this a bug? So is this? It came up before. Yes. So we have a question: is this? I'm going to get back to that in 1 second. We have a question on this bug. We said the fruit doesn't have a cheskes kashrus. Okay, because we don't care about the fruit's cheskes kashrus, but the bug has a cheskes kashrus because the bug also started off as being mutter. So I have a question: is this a bug that crawls with mechuber? That's the shaila. Did it come on the b'tolish before? Well, even if it came on the mechuber. It has a cheskes kashrus that the bug never crawled with mechuber. Bugs don't have a chazaka of having crawled with mechuber. That's all I know that. Why not say cheskes kashrus? You say I can't say cheskes kashrus.
There's no chazaka one way or the other.
There is, because when it was born, it wasn't crawling. When it was born, it was mutter. The first second it was born, it was mutter. So the crazy place.
Why?
So the mechaber holds the mechaber held that if it's born b'mechuber, it still has to crawl. If it's born on a fruit, it depends where it's born, where on the ground it's born. So the crazy place he says not like I'm saying. He says that's not true. He says bugs as soon as the bug is born, it starts crawling. He says as soon as they're born, they're crawling. So there's no cheskes kashrus. There's no cheskes kashrus. Yes. Okay. Now that part of it we can handle. We call it chazaka. Say it's chazaka. He says as soon as it's born, they crawl right away. He says so. It's like there's no such thing as a bug. Didn't have a time, so to speak, when it was born and not crawling. Okay. But he also wants to say that that's as his husband. We talked about this way back in Halacha Aleph. That it's not considered. Insects are not considered asur mitchilas b'yasan because as soon as they're born, they start crawling. Okay. Because there was a child, if you remember back then, why they should be considered barriers. Either aren't asur mitchilas b'yasan because the minute they're born, they were mutter. The first second they're born, they're mutter. He wants to say they instantly are crawling that they never had a second when they were mutter.
When they're born, are they needle like 9 when they're born?
We finished with that already. We don't know. Let's say yes. An ant, when it's born, it's nearly 9. An ant is okay. Now, okay. To make Yossi feel more at home, the crazy place he says this is an answer for why the Ramah says in Pei Aleph. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll look into it, Yossi. If you have a shiloh about an animal, where you have milk from a cow, and you want to know if it became a treifa earlier or later. Okay, we don't know. We have the milk. We don't, and the animal's now a treifa. Did the animal become a treifa earlier or later? We say the animal became a treifa later. Why? Because on the animal it has the cheskes kashrus. It was born not a treifa. It's assumed to have been born not a treifa, so we say it has a cheskes kashrus, so that the treifa is happened as late as possible. The fruit has no cheskes kashrus. the fruit has cheskas kashrus. The fruit's cheskas kashrus has no meaning to us, and therefore we can't say that the cheskas kashrus, and therefore the bug is mutter because it had a cheskas kashrus. Okay. Okay. We now go on to some.
Isn't chazaka tasha what it is now is what it was before?
So usually in those choices we go with the original chazaka first. The chazaka tells us it's always been like that until it couldn't happen. Okay. And in our case, that's in the case of the cows is what to talk about. In the case of the bugs, which is our really our case, there's no chazaka now. There's no chazaka now. We just have a thing in front of us.
Do we have like Kushner line one?
Okay. Our case was talking about we weren't sure whether it was the talish or the mechuber. Okay. The Taz talked about raisins that the bugs usually come on the talish. Okay. That's the raisins, which is in fact that's the truth. They come on the talish. So just as a we're going to talk about something, but just as what I'm about to say is theory. I have no basis for what I'm saying, but just this is a theory. Why is it that if you look at a chart that tells you which things to check for bugs and not to check for bugs, okay, why are there more bugs on vegetables than there are on fruits? Okay, so I'm saying this, my theory, to lead into what the next thing we'll talk about, which is, and that's what and it'll help us understand the Taz. And the reason is because my theory is that there are two reasons. One is fruits tend to be solid. Okay, an apple is a full solid thing, different than a lettuce, which is this big open. The thing is very wide and open. There's lots of room for bugs to go hide in there. The fruit is solid. So there are solid vegetables also. Cucumbers don't have bugs in them either. Cucumbers don't have bugs in them because they're also solid. From this perspective, they're like a fruit. There's no place for the bugs to hide in them. And the second is that fruits tend to grow high off the ground. Think of an orange tree, an apple tree, they're growing high off the ground, as opposed to vegetables tend to grow in the ground. So the fruits have more, less opportunity to find bugs in them, and therefore berries, which are sort of fruits, grow closer to the ground. They have more bugs. They have places to hide, and they have closer to the ground. They have more. What?
Bugs have wings. They can fly.
Okay, that's true. Okay, so now so now a grape, to help us understand the Taz, a grape doesn't get bugs in it because there's no place for them to hide, and they're hanging up on a vine. There's no place for the bug to hide anyhow. When you put the grape on the...
I would have thought on celery there's no place to hide either, but you have these leaf liners, and somehow, you know what I'm saying?
They find they're very creative. Okay. You don't have to agree with my theory. Okay, but we take the grape, and you put it on the floor, and now the grape, all the juice starts to ooze out of it. And so it's laying on the floor, and there's places where the bugs can get in. That's when they do become infested. So that's why raisins have bugs. The bugs in the raisins come in the talish, not the mechuber, because the mechuber, there's no place for the bug to sit. There's no place to go. And when the talish, then it has a place to it. That's for the Taz. We're giving our own theories in the Taz. And this juice just attracts them. Okay, now, we have an exception to the rule. When we talk about what I came to tell you about was something that seems to be an exception to the rule. Okay, and that is something called a Calimyrna fig. Okay, the common figs that we eat, they're called Calimyrna figs. Okay, the inside of that fruit, okay, the inside in your mind, of a fig, okay, is not solid. It doesn't look like an apple. When you open up a fig, not a dry fig. I tried. It's the wrong season, but there are no fresh figs now. I wanted to bring them to show to you. Fresh figs. They're not solid on the inside. Okay, they don't look like a solid fruit. They're all full of a million little things in there. Okay, and the reason is, and not only that, figs have another unusual feature, which is they have a hole in them. If they have a hole in them on the bottom, a fig is, you don't notice in a dry fig, but in a fresh fig, it's roundish on the bottom and comes to a point on the top. Okay, the pointy part is the part that's attached to the tree. Okay, the flat part on the bottom has a hole in it. Okay. Why on earth is there a hole in the bottom of the fruit? Oranges don't have holes in them unless there's something wrong with it. Why is there a hole in the bottom of it? And the reason is because botanically, figs are not considered fruits. Okay, figs are not fruits. Figs are flowers. Figs are inverted flowers. Okay, think of a flower that instead of the pistils and stamens sticking outwards, instead the whole thing was flipped inside out. So what's on the inside of the fig is a million flowers, the pieces of a flower facing the inside, coated on the outside with the covering, but of course the flower is there to to be pollinated. It can't be pollinated if there's no hole in it. So the person put a hole into the bottom of it so that it can be pollinated. It can't be pollinated if it will be closed up solid. It will be worthless. What will be the point of a flower that you can't get into? So the flower has been inverted. Okay, the flower has been turned back onto itself, and then there's a hole so that it can be pollinated. Okay, so botanically they don't consider. We call it a fruit because it's something you pull off a tree and you eat it. Okay, that's what we call a fruit. But botanically, it's not considered a fruit. It's considered a flower. It's an inverted flower. It's an edible flower. Okay, that's botanically it's considered an edible flower. Okay, and because of that, that's why there's a shayla that there should be bugs in them, because it's not a fruit. If oranges, we don't think of bugs on the inside. No, on the peels, we talked about it. But on the inside of the oranges, how would bugs get into there? What would bugs be doing inside of an orange? How would they get there? But in the inside of a fig, there's an opening. There's a big, if you get a fresh fig, you can even see it in a dried fig a little bit, but in a fresh fig, you see there's an opening on the bottom, not the pointy part. On the bottom part, there's an opening, and the opening is there in order to become pollinated. Okay, now, to our surprise, or to my surprise, okay, fig trees, there are male fig trees and female fig trees. Okay, to our surprise. Okay, I believe you. But in figs, there are male and female trees. The male date trees.
Oh, dates.
Okay, the male fig trees are called Capri figs. Okay, and those are not sold. You'll hear why in a second. Okay, those are not sold for eating, to my knowledge. They're not sold for eating. Okay, and the female trees came from a place in Turkey called Smyrna. And when they were brought to California, they made a contraction of the word California and Smyrna to make Calimyrna. Okay, so the reason why they're called Calimyrna figs is because they're the California version of the Smyrna tree. Okay, in fact, they were very surprised. They couldn't figure out why they weren't getting figs for the first long while when they had only the male trees. Okay, so only when they brought the Smyrna trees, all of a sudden that's how they had figs. Okay, and in order for these trees to grow properly, they need to be pollinated by a certain wasp. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name. Lastophaga piscinus. Okay, so, and that's called the Calimyrna fig wasp. That's what it's called because that's what pollinates. Okay, now listen what happens. This fig, pollinate. It means to transfer the pollen from the male part of the plant to the female part of the plant to make it grow better. So in a regular flower, that's what happens. There's the male part of a flower and a female, and it takes the bugs are taking pollen from one to the other. Okay, they're not taking it on purpose. They're taking it. They don't realize what they're doing, but they're transporting it back and forth. Most maybe that they go back and forth.
They call it Turkey. They're not called Calimyrna wasps in Turkey. Are they?
What? I don't know what they call them in Turkey. Okay, so now what happens like this? What happens like Turkey?
Because all figs are from Turkey.
They come right. Okay, now the wasp is not born. The wasp is born in the Capri fig. Okay, the Capri figs, if you want, I'll show you the videos of it. The Capri figs are crawling with bugs. Okay, that's why they don't sell them, because they're full of wasps. Okay, nobody would eat them because they're crawling with. I'll show you the videos. It's not to believe what's going on in these things. They're crawling with bugs. What happens is they come out, and if you would leave them to do as they want to, they will lay their eggs in the next Capri fig. Okay, that's where they're supposed to lay. That's so to speak where they feel comfortable.
Female wasps.
These are, I don't know if they're male or female. Yeah, they're female wasps. Yeah, the females of those wasps would lay their eggs in the next Capri fig. In the Capri fig. What the farmers do is like this: they capture those wasps coming out of the Capri fig. They bring them over to the Calimyrna figs. And what happens is, so the fig. The wasp is not so intelligent. He sees a fig, he goes in and lays eggs, she goes in and lay her eggs inside the Calimyrna figs. The way the Brunson built it was, the Calimyrna figs grow at a different size, and the bug cannot lay its eggs. The structure of it, I think it's a little bit bigger than the Capri fig. It goes inside to try to lay its egg. It's hopeless. It can't do it. It can't fit. The parts of its body don't fit into the right places to lay its egg. So it tries and goes from fig to fig to fig, trying to lay its egg. Now, had it landed in a Capri fig, which it wants to be, it could lay its egg in a second. But in the Smyrna figs, in the Calimyrna figs, it's going from fig to fig to fig, and it can't lay it. And of course, the design for that is, of course, the merchant made it like that so that it'll spread the pollen. They picked up pollen back at home in the Capri fig, brought them over to here, so sitting on its body is the pollen. When it comes to the Calimyrna fig, it's trying to lay its eggs.
Okay, so why do you need the farmer to move it over?
They wouldn't come here, because naturally they would just lay their eggs into the next Capri fig.
They made it that way.
So I don't know how to run. So that part of the plan I don't know. Maybe in Turkey it doesn't work like that. But the farmers bring the figs over to here. They bring the figs to the Calimyrna. They try. So this bug goes from fig to fig to fig, pollinating the tree. Eventually, it either plots, okay, it just gives up. In some of the places, the hole is very small, so it could lose a wing, and then that's the end of it. It can't go anyplace.
How come the wasp hasn't been extinct if they have no place to lay their eggs?
They don't take them all. They take them all.
That's why they do the first.
If they take every one of them, they would have no figs next year.
That's okay.
Right, so they don't take all of them. But
It's illogical.
So what does the process do with the first?
yes, that doesn't mean that they don't catch every single.
Bees don't live in those.
Yeah, they don't catch every single one of them. So now, there are therefore people who are concerned that if you eat figs, that we eat the Calimyrna figs, the female figs, okay, that there are wasps inside of them. And the reason is because there are definitely wasps in those farms, because in order for the tree to grow well, you need a wasp to go around in there. So they bring the wasp.
You don't have pieces of it.
What?
Not against the nut.
Well, you would, if it plots in here, if it plots in your fig, they're very big. You'll see those videos. They're nice.
You can't miss them.
So the potential is that there's the question, the theory, that they would potentially be in there and they could die in there. Okay? In fact, I forgot to tell you, the pollination of these trees is called caprification. Okay, because it takes wasps from the capri fig to over here, so it's called caprification. Capri is the male.
We eat the female?
Right, you can't eat the male. You could eat it, but it's full of bugs. I mean, it's crawling with bugs. Okay,
So live bugs.
well, by the time it gets to the store, it wouldn't be live bugs, but on the tree,
A sack of bugs.
it lays their eggs in there. It lays its eggs, so 20 eggs come in. Yeah, it's a hive. That's the home. That's it. Okay, now there are those who say that's the theory that if the wasp dies inside of the Calimyrna fig, which happens on occasion, figs have an enzyme in them. Actually, an enzyme that we use nowadays. It's called, I don't know how to pronounce it. FICIN. Okay, ficin. Okay, and there's an enzyme in there. There's an enzyme in there of actually a very valuable enzyme inside of figs. Okay, and there are those who say that if a wasp would die inside of the fig, the enzyme would disintegrate. Good word. Would disintegrate. Okay, there wouldn't be anything left. Okay, and therefore the chances of you actually finding one in your actual things that you eat are very small because you get disintegrated.
Like artichokes.
Okay,
Because brine, right?
okay, yes. Okay, so let's think about now where there could be a bug in a fig. Okay, so the first thing is that there could be a bug in a fig. It's open to the outside. Okay, it's open to the outside, and it's just opening different than other fruit. That's why we're talking about it, because it's different than other fruit. The first is the wasp might have gotten stuck inside. Okay, if the wasp is in there, it's usher. Okay, the wasp is usher for 3 easy reasons why the wasp is usher.
When did the wasp go in? When it was still connected, correct?
Yes. Okay. So first is it was not born on this fig. Okay. The wasp came over from the male fig. Okay. The wasp came over, so it came on the mechover and it flew around. The wasp would move around within the fig. We saw way back when that if it moves around within the fruit, the mechover, it's also here. There's plenty of room to move around.
There's no pleasures, no.
And we're not going to be suffering.
Okay.
And the last is that it's a flying bug. This is not a land bug. This is a flying bug. It has wings on it. So it's usher. Whichever way you're going to slice it, that bug would be usher. But of course, the other side is that there are those who say that if it would be in there, it would get disintegrated. And like Yankee said, they're big. They're not big. I mean, relatively big. And you would see them. You would see them if they were in there. Okay. Now, there's no chashash that there are baby wasps inside of a fig that we buy, because as I told you, the wasps cannot lay their eggs in the Calimyrna figs. That's the whole logic over here is, the whole design is, you can't lay eggs he can't lay eggs in the figs that we eat. It's not possible to lay eggs in it. So there can't be baby eggs. There can't be baby wasps in there. There can't be there could be adults, maybe. Babies, if it's sure, can't be, because they can't physically lay their eggs in there. That's the whole chachma here, that they can't lay their eggs in there. But of course, it's open season to other things. The hole is open. The only thing that crawls in, not only wasps that can crawl in, anything can crawl in. It's an open hole. Okay, there's open to the outside. You can see it. Unfortunately, it's
Does that affect the other birds as well?
potentially. So okay, and there's now within the Kashrus people, there's a difference of opinion as to whether there really are bugs in it. Okay, some people think that there are, and you should check them, and other people think there's absolutely nothing in there.
Why
And-
don't you give it to professionals?
Can I go to California?
And so I'm just going to end off this part of it. I have no idea whether there are or there aren't. Okay, when I spoke to other people that what they thought about it, I heard completely different stories from everybody and their mother-in-law as to whether there are or there aren't. Okay, but the bugs that we're thinking about, l'chayra, we're not thinking about the adult wasps. Well, probably not. We're for sure not talking about baby wasps. The only possibility is they may have something else. They're just, what?
The teenager.
The teenager. No, not the, maybe something else crawled in. It's an open hole.
Get in there. They can't
As I said, they can't be babies. And they can't, maybe an adult would have flown in and got stuck in it, maybe yes and maybe not.
Maybe not.
And maybe something from the outside came in, and that's, again, a machlokes between the people over there. So we need good information. Thank you.